Commander Park Gina stood at the observation deck of Kepler Station, her hands pressed against the cold metal railing as she stared into the void of space. What she saw made her blood run cold. Hundreds of alien warships had appeared out of nowhere, their dark hulls reflecting the distant starlight like predators in the night. The ships were massive, each one bigger than anything humanity had ever built. "Ma'am, we're getting readings of over 300 vessels," reported Sergeant Lee Min from the sensor station. His voice was steady, but Gina could hear the fear underneath. "They're surrounding the entire station." Gina nodded slowly. She had been expecting this day ever since the first reports came in about the Valon Empire's expansion into human space. The aliens had been conquering world after world, and now they had reached humanity's furthest outpost. The communication array suddenly burst to life with a harsh, alien voice that made everyone on the bridge freeze. "Attention, human insects. This is Admiral Cavamore of the mighty Valon Empire. Your pathetic little station is now surrounded by our glorious fleet. You have exactly 10 minutes to surrender, or we will turn your metal box into space dust." Lieutenant Kim Day, Gina's trusted second-in-command, stepped closer to her. His jaw was clenched tight with anger. "Commander, what are your orders? Should we try to contact Earth?" Gina looked around the bridge at her crew. These were good people, scientists and researchers who had come to the edge of known space to study new worlds and expand human knowledge. They didn't deserve to die here so far from home, but she also knew that running away wasn't an option. If Kepler Station fell without a fight, it would send a message to the entire galaxy that humans were weak. "Kim, start emergency evacuation procedures," she said in a calm voice that surprised even herself. "Get all civilian personnel to the escape pods. Make sure the research data is uploaded to the emergency beacons. If we don't make it out of here, at least our work will survive." The next few minutes were chaos. Scientists and technicians ran through the corridors, grabbing essential equipment and personal belongings. The station's automated systems began preparing the escape pods, while Gina and her military crew moved to the weapon control room. Dr. Yun Su, the station's chief scientist, approached Gina as she was checking the defensive systems. "Commander, my team has finished uploading all our research to the emergency beacons, but there's something else you should know." "What is it, Doctor?" "We've been monitoring some strange energy readings from the outer system for the past few weeks. Something big is out there, but it's been completely silent. We thought it might be a natural phenomenon, but now I'm not so sure." Before Gina could respond, the alien voice crackled through the speakers again. "Your time is up, humans. Prepare to die." The first alien weapons hit Kepler Station like hammers striking glass. The station's shields, designed to protect against small asteroids and space debris, lasted about 30 seconds against the alien assault. Explosions rocked the station as bulkheads cracked and atmosphere began venting into space. "Return fire!" Gina shouted, but she knew it was hopeless. The station's weapons were mining lasers and small defense guns, nothing that could hurt the massive alien warships. Kim Day was at the weapons console, his fingers flying over the controls. "Ma'am, our weapons aren't even scratching their shields." Another massive explosion shook the station, and Gina could hear the hull groaning under the stress. Warning lights flashed red throughout the bridge, and the artificial gravity flickered on and off. "All escape pods away," reported Communications Officer Park Jun. "The civilians are clear." Gina nodded and moved to her command chair. If this was going to be her last stand, she would face it with dignity. "Kim, send a message to all remaining crew. Anyone who wants to leave should go now. This is not their fight." But nobody moved. Every person on the bridge stayed at their station, ready to fight to the end. The alien bombardment continued, and huge sections of the station began breaking apart. Through the observation windows, Gina could see pieces of Kepler Station spinning away into the darkness of space. "Commander, main power is failing," shouted Engineer Nam Hyun from his console. "We've got maybe 2 minutes before total system shutdown." Gina looked at her crew one last time. These brave men and women had chosen to stay and fight, even though they knew they couldn't win. They deserved to be remembered. She activated her personal communication device and spoke clearly into it. "This is Commander Park Gina of Kepler Station to Earth Command. The Valon Empire has attacked with a massive fleet. Station defenses have failed. Evacuation successful for all civilian personnel. Recommend immediate activation of Protocol Warhammer. Long live humanity. The final explosion that destroyed Kepler. Station's main reactor lit up space like a small star. When the light faded, nothing remained of humanity's furthest outpost, except scattered debris and the escape pods carrying the survivors toward home. But Gina's message had already traveled across the vast distance to Earth through the quantum communication array. In the deepest military bunkers on humanity's homeworld, ancient computers received the transmission and began awakening systems that had been sleeping for over 2 centuries. Protocol Warhammer was now active, and the real war was about to begin. 6 months had crawled by since the destruction of Kepler Station, and the galaxy had watched in horror as Admiral Kavmor's massive fleet moved through human space like an unstoppable storm. Planet after planet fell to the Valon Empire's might, and it seemed like nothing could slow their advance. The conquest had been swift and brutal. New Sol, humanity's agricultural hub, surrendered after a 3-day bombardment that turned their orbital defense platforms into floating scrap metal. The mining colonies of the Centauri system lasted only hours before their desperate calls for help were silenced forever. One by one, 17 human worlds had fallen under alien control, their populations herded into massive transport ships and taken away to serve as slave labor on distant worlds. Admiral Kavmor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the mighty Dominion, feeling very pleased with himself. The ship was enormous, stretching over 2 kilometers in length and bristling with enough weapons to destroy entire cities. Through the massive viewing windows, he could see dozens of other Valon warships moving in perfect formation, their hulls painted with the victory marks of conquered worlds. "Admiral, the latest intelligence reports have arrived," announced Intelligence Officer Zeltar as he approached with a data tablet in his clawed hands. The alien moved with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. Kavmor took the tablet and scrolled through the information, his mood growing even better with each line he read. "Excellent work, Zeltar. These humans are even weaker than we initially thought." "Yes, sir. Our analysis shows that Earth's total industrial capacity is roughly equivalent to a single Valon sector. Their largest military vessels are what we would classify as patrol boats. Most of their fleet consists of cargo ships and research vessels that have been hastily fitted with mining lasers." The Admiral let out a sound that might have been laughter in his species. "Mining lasers! They think they can fight the Valon Empire with mining equipment." Zeltar continued his report with obvious satisfaction. "Our spy drones have been monitoring Earth's communications for months. Their military leaders are in complete panic. They're calling up reserves and converting civilian vessels into warships, but it's all pointless. Even if they manage to gather every ship they have, they couldn't match even 1/10 of our current fleet strength." Kavmor nodded as he studied the tactical displays showing Earth's pathetic defensive preparations. The humans had pulled back all their remaining forces to their home system, creating what they probably thought was an impressive defensive line. To Valon eyes, it looked more like a collection of toys trying to stop an avalanche. "Have our advanced scouts reported any unusual activity?" the Admiral asked. "Nothing significant, sir. Some increased industrial activity on Earth and a few of their colonies, but it appears to be standard wartime production. They're probably trying to build more of those useless patrol boats." The bridge crew around them worked efficiently at their stations, monitoring the hundreds of ships under Kavmor's command. The Valon Empire had been conquering worlds for over 1,000 years, and they had turned warfare into a precise science. Every ship knew its role. Every weapon had been tested in countless battles, and every crew member had experience in dozens of campaigns. "Prepare a message for broadcast on all human communication frequencies," Kavmor ordered. "It's time to end this pathetic resistance." Meanwhile, far below the surface of Earth, in bunkers so deep that most people had forgotten they existed, something very different was happening. Colonel Li Wu walked through corridors that hadn't seen human footsteps in over 2 centuries. The air was thick and stale, and the only light came from emergency strips that had been designed to last for hundreds of years. These weren't ordinary military bunkers. They had been built during humanity's darker days, when wars between nations had threatened to destroy the entire planet. Back then, when humans still fought each other instead of reaching for the stars, some very smart and very paranoid people had decided to build the ultimate insurance policy. "Status report," Li Wu called out as he entered the main control room. Engineer Kim Bo looked up from a bank of ancient computers that were slowly coming back to life. "Sir, we're at 60% power restoration. The main manufacturing systems are responding, but it's going to take time. These machines haven't run since the Unity Wars ended in 2187. The sound that filled the deep bunkers was like nothing heard on Earth for generations. Massive machinery, carved directly into the planets. Bedrock began to move for the first time in centuries. Conveyor systems miles long started carrying raw materials to assembly lines that could build things the current generation of humans had never imagined. How long until full operational capacity? Li Wu asked. Another 72 hours, sir. But once we're running at full power, we'll be producing at rates that will make the aliens very, very surprised. In other bunkers around the world, similar scenes were playing out. Beneath the Himalayas, under the ice caps of Antarctica, hidden in ocean trenches so deep that the pressure would crush ordinary submarines, humanity's real military might was waking up from its long sleep. These weren't the factories that built, the patrol ships and research vessels the aliens had been destroying. These were the facilities that had been designed to fight wars that would decide the fate of entire civilizations. They had been built by people who understood that someday humanity might face an enemy that threatened not just their way of life, but their very existence. Above ground, Earth's leaders continued to broadcast messages of desperation and fear, exactly as they had planned. The aliens needed to believe that humanity was weak and defeated. They needed to think that Earth would surrender without a real fight. But deep underground, Colonel Li Wu smiled as he watched readings that showed industrial capacity coming online at levels that hadn't been seen since the ancient wars. The Valon Empire thought they were fighting farmers and merchants who had gotten too big for their britches. They were about to learn that they had awakened something much more dangerous than they could possibly imagine. President Han Minji stood at the podium in the Global Assembly Hall, her shoulders slumped in what appeared to be complete defeat. Behind her, the flags of Earth's nations hung motionless, and the faces of world leaders showed nothing but despair. The cameras broadcasting to every corner of human space captured every detail of what looked like humanity's darkest hour. "Fellow citizens," she began, her voice trembling with what sounded like genuine fear, "for 6 months we have watched as our colonies fell one by one to the Valon Empire. We have seen our fleets destroyed, our people enslaved, and our hopes for the future crushed beneath their superior technology." She paused, appearing to wipe away a tear. In reality, she was buying time for the final preparations taking place in the deep bunkers far below. Every second of this performance had been carefully planned, every word chosen to convince the watching aliens that humanity had truly given up. "The Valon Empire has proven too powerful for us to resist," she continued. "Their weapons are beyond our understanding, their ships outnumber ours by hundreds to one, and their military might is something we cannot hope to match. Therefore, to save what remains of our species from total extinction, I have no choice but to announce our unconditional surrender." The broadcast signal traveled instantly across the solar system to where Admiral Kavmor's massive fleet waited in high orbit above Earth. On the bridge of the Dominion, the alien commander watched the human leader's speech with obvious satisfaction. "Finally, these primitive creatures have accepted reality," Kavmor said to his officers. "Order the ceremonial fleet into position. I want every ship in perfect formation for the surrender ceremony. This moment will be remembered throughout the galaxy as the day the Valon Empire added another species to our collection." Word of humanity's surrender spread quickly through the galaxy's communication networks. Within hours, ships from dozens of alien species began arriving in Earth's solar system. The Krillian Trade Federation sent their fastest diplomatic vessels, eager to establish new trade routes through former human territory. The Nexus Collective dispatched their most advanced recording ships to document the historic moment. Even the mysterious Void Watchers emerged from their distant realm to witness what they believed would be humanity's final chapter. The aliens positioned their ships at a respectful distance from the Valon fleet, creating a massive audience in space for the surrender ceremony. News networks across the galaxy interrupted regular programming to broadcast live coverage of what they called the fall of the human species. But far beneath Earth's oceans, in trenches so deep that the crushing pressure would destroy any normal submarine, a very different scene was playing out. Captain Choi Bin stood on the bridge of the Dreadnought Thunder, watching the ceremony above through periscope displays that somehow managed to penetrate kilometers of water without being detected. The Thunder was not like any ship the aliens had ever seen. It was massive, over a kilometer long, and built from materials that didn't officially exist. Its hull was covered in armor that could withstand the pressure of the deepest ocean trenches, and its weapon systems were powered by technology that had been locked away for centuries. "Captain, all systems are green," reported his first officer, Lieutenant Park Yon. "Engines are running silent, weapons are charged, and all crew are at battle stations." Around the Thunder, hidden in ocean trenches around the world, dozens of similar vessels waited in perfect silence. These weren't the patrol boats and converted cargo ships the aliens had been destroying for months. These were humanity's real warships, built in secret facilities that had been preparing for this moment since the first alien signal had been detected. "Communications. What's the status of the ceremony?" Choi Bin asked. Communications Officer Yang Su looked up from her console. "Admiral Kavmor has just begun his victory speech, sir. He's talking about how the Valon Empire will bring order to this sector of the galaxy." Through the periscope displays, they could see the alien admiral standing on a platform that had been extended from his flagship. Hundreds of alien ships surrounded Earth in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming in the sunlight. It was an impressive display of power, exactly what the aliens wanted the galaxy to see. "Perfect," Choi Bin said with a grim smile. "They've positioned themselves exactly where we want them. Signal all ships. Operation Revelation is now active." In the deepest parts of Earth's oceans, subtle changes began to occur. Water pressure, sensors that had been monitoring the ocean floor for centuries, suddenly detected massive movements. Ancient systems that had been dormant since the Unity Wars came online, their power signatures hidden beneath layers of rock and water. The aliens above had no idea what was happening below them. Their sensors were focused on the surface, watching for any sign of human military activity. They expected to see desperate attempts to launch the remaining patrol boats, maybe some futile gestures of defiance from the conquered species. Instead, they saw exactly what they wanted to see, a broken species accepting defeat. President Han. Minji had finished her surrender speech and was now walking slowly toward the transport that would take her to Admiral Kavmor's flagship. Her head was bowed, her steps uncertain, and every camera in the system was recording her apparent shame. But if the aliens had been able to see through the ocean floor, they would have witnessed something that would have sent them fleeing in. Terror. Massive doors that hadn't opened in 200 years were sliding apart, revealing launch tubes large enough to hold city-sized vessels. Power systems that could have supplied entire planets were reaching full capacity. And weapons that had been designed to fight wars between worlds were powering up for the first time since the ancient conflicts that had nearly destroyed humanity. "All ships report ready for launch," Yang Su announced quietly. Captain Choi Bin looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These men and women had volunteered for a mission that officially didn't exist. They had spent years training on ships that weren't supposed to be real, preparing for a war that everyone hoped would never come. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice calm despite the magnitude of what was about to happen, "humanity has been underestimated. In approximately 30 seconds, we're going to remind the galaxy why that was a mistake." Above them, Admiral Kavmor continued his speech, completely unaware that he was about to become part of the greatest military surprise in galactic history. Admiral Kavmor stood on his ceremonial platform, high above Earth's surface, holding the ancient Valon blade that had been used to mark the defeat of countless species throughout their empire's long history. The weapon gleamed in the starlight as he prepared to bring it down in the ritual strike that would officially mark humanity's surrender. "Today marks another glorious victory for the Valon Empire," he declared, his voice being broadcast across the galaxy. The human species joins the long list of conquered worlds that have learned to bow before our superior civilization. Around him, hundreds of alien ships formed perfect ceremonial formations. Representatives from dozens of species watched from their vessels, recording every moment of what they believed would be remembered as the end of human independence. The scene was exactly what the Valon Empire wanted the galaxy to see: overwhelming power, bringing another upstart species to heel. But just as Kavmor began to lower his ceremonial blade, every sensor on every ship in the area suddenly screamed, "With alarm signals, Admiral!" shouted his sensor officer, panic clear in his voice. "I'm reading massive energy signatures materializing all around us. How is this possible?" The space around Earth, which had been empty moments before, suddenly filled with enormous shapes that seemed to tear themselves out of nothingness. One by one, gigantic warships appeared, as if they had been hiding behind invisible curtains. These weren't the small patrol boats and converted cargo vessels the Valon had been destroying for months. These were monsters. Each ship was over a kilometer long, their hulls black as space itself and covered in armor that looked like it could withstand the explosion of a star. Weapons batteries ran along their sides like the spines of some ancient sea creature, and their very presence seemed to make space itself bend around them. The largest of the ships materialized directly in front of the Valon flagship, so close that Admiral Kavmor could see every detail of its construction through his viewing windows. The vessel was absolutely massive, making even his mighty dominion look like a child's toy by comparison. "Impossible," Kavmor whispered, his ceremonial blade forgotten in his trembling hand. No primitive species could build ships like these. The lead ship's hull bore markings that no alien had ever seen before: UES Eternal Storm. As they watched in growing horror, weapon ports along the massive vessel began to glow with energy that made their own weapons look like flashlights. Every communication channel in the alien fleet suddenly filled with a new voice, one that carried the authority of someone who had never known defeat. The main screen on every ship displayed the face of a human woman, whose weathered features spoke of battles fought in the darkness between stars. "Admiral Kavmor," she said, her voice calm and deadly cold. "This is Fleet Admiral Song Hana of Earth's Home Defense Force. I'm afraid your victory celebration is somewhat premature." Kavmor's mouth fell open as he stared at the human officer on his screen. Her uniform was unlike anything they had seen on the conquered human worlds. It was black as deep space, decorated with symbols that seemed to shift and move in the light. "Your surrender ceremony has served its purpose," Admiral Song continued. "Earth's surrender was nothing more than tactical deception, designed to position your entire fleet exactly where we wanted you. Congratulations, Admiral. You've just made the largest tactical error in galactic history." Before Kavmor could respond, the first salvo from the human Dreadnoughts lit up space like the birth of new suns. Energy beams that seemed to twist reality itself reached out from the massive ships and touched 3 Valon heavy cruisers. The alien vessels, each one protected by shields that could deflect asteroid impacts, simply ceased to exist. There was no explosion, no debris field, no dramatic destruction. The ships were there one moment and gone the next, as if they had never existed at all. "All ships, evasive maneuvers!" Kavmor screamed into his communications array, but his fleet was trapped. The human ships had positioned themselves perfectly, creating a sphere of destruction around the alien formation with no escape routes. More human weapons fired, and this time the aliens could see what was happening to their ships. The energy beams didn't just destroy the vessels they hit. They seemed to unravel them at the atomic level, breaking them down into their component particles and scattering them across space. "This is impossible," Kavmor shouted at Admiral Song's image on his screen. "You're a primitive species. You've barely been in space for 3 centuries. How can you have weapons like this?" Admiral Song's smile was colder than the vacuum of space. "Admiral, you made the same mistake that every aggressor in galactic history has made. You assumed that because we're young, we must be weak. You assumed that because our colonies fell easily, we had shown you everything we were capable of." Another wave of human weapons fire eliminated 6 more Valon ships, and panic was beginning to spread through the alien fleet. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were fleeing in terror from weapons they couldn't understand. "The truth is, Admiral, We've been preparing for this war since our species first looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there, Song continued. Every human who ever dreamed of traveling to distant worlds knew that someday we might meet someone who wanted to destroy us. So we prepared. The bridge of Kavmor's flagship shook as human weapons found their target. His shields, which could deflect the weapons of any known species, lasted exactly 4 seconds against the human assault. The colonies you conquered, the fleets you destroyed, the resistance you crushed, all of it was part of the plan, Admiral. Song explained as more alien ships vanished from existence. We needed you to believe you were winning. We needed you to commit your entire fleet to this attack, and most importantly, we needed you all in one place. Around Earth, dozens of human dreadnoughts continued their devastating assault. Each ship moved with impossible grace for something so large, their weapons reaching out to touch alien vessels with deadly precision. The Valon fleet, which had seemed so impressive moments before, was being systematically destroyed. You want to know how a primitive species could build ships like these? Admiral Song asked as Kavmor's flagship began to list to one side, its systems failing under the human attack. The answer is simple, Admiral. We didn't build them yesterday. We didn't build them last year. We've been building them for over 200 years, waiting for the day when someone like you would come calling. The ceremonial blade fell from Kavmor's nerveless fingers as he realized the magnitude of his error. The humans hadn't surrendered at all. They had set the perfect trap, and he had walked his entire fleet directly into it. Welcome to Earth, Admiral, Song said, as the final human salvo reached out to embrace the dying Valon flagship. We hope you've enjoyed your stay. The battle that would change galactic history lasted exactly 18 minutes and 37 seconds. When the final human weapon fell silent, the space around Earth looked like a graveyard of alien ambitions. Twisted metal and debris from hundreds of Valon warships drifted in slowly expanding clouds, catching the light of Earth's sun like deadly confetti celebrating humanity's victory. Admiral Kavmor's flagship, the once mighty Dominion, limped away from the battlefield with massive holes torn in its hull. Emergency lights flickered along its damaged corridors, and the alien crew moved in stunned silence, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. The ship that had conquered dozens of worlds now struggled to maintain basic life support as it crawled toward the edge of the solar system. On the bridge, Kavmor sat in his command chair like a broken statue. His ceremonial uniform was torn and stained, and his eyes held the hollow look of someone who had seen the impossible become reality. Around him, his surviving officers worked frantically to keep their crippled ship from falling apart completely. "Sir, we're receiving damage reports from across the fleet," his communications officer reported, his voice barely above a whisper. "We've lost over 300 ships. The survivors are requesting permission to retreat." Kavmor nodded weakly. The greatest fleet in Valon history had been destroyed by a species they had dismissed as primitive. The shame of it would haunt him for the rest of his life, however long that might be. But the worst was yet to come. Admiral Song Hana's face appeared once again on every functioning screen throughout the fleeing alien fleet. Her expression was calm and professional, but there was something in her eyes that made even battle-hardened Valon warriors shiver with fear. "Attention all Valon territories and allied species," she began, her voice carrying across space to reach monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. "I want to make sure there are no misunderstandings about what just happened here." The alien representatives who had come to witness humanity's surrender now watched in growing horror as the human admiral continued her broadcast. Ships from dozens of species hung motionless in space, their crews too shocked to move. "What you witnessed today was Earth's defensive fleet," Song explained, letting that fact sink in. "These ships were built to protect our homeworld, nothing more. They have never left our solar system, and their only purpose was to defend our planet if it was ever directly threatened." Across the galaxy, intelligence officers and military analysts felt their blood run cold as they began to understand the implications of what they were hearing. Our primary war fleets, the ships we built for conquest among the distant stars, departed for Valon space approximately 6 months ago, shortly after you began your invasion of human territory, Admiral Song continued. "Captain Yoon Tae's first expeditionary force should be arriving at your homeworld right about now." At that exact moment, as if the universe itself was timing the revelation for maximum effect, emergency signals began flooding communication networks across the galaxy. The first distress call came from Valon Prime, the Empire's capital world that had never been threatened in over 1,000 years of conquest. Mayday, Mayday. This is Valon Prime Defense Command. We are under attack by unknown vessels of massive size. Our orbital platforms are being destroyed. Please, anyone who receives this, send help. Before that transmission ended, another began from the industrial world of Valon Secundus. Emergency broadcast to all Valon forces. Human dreadnoughts have appeared in our system. They came out of nowhere. Our entire home fleet is being destroyed, one by one. Distress calls poured in from 12 core Valon systems. Each message painted the same terrifying picture. Massive human warships emerging from hyperspace without warning, their weapons already firing, their assault so swift and coordinated that the defending fleets barely had time to raise their shields. The pattern was becoming clear to military observers throughout the galaxy. While the Valon Empire had been congratulating itself on conquering human colonies, humanity had been preparing a counterattack that struck at the very heart of alien territory. The colonies that had fallen so easily hadn't been defended because all of humanity's real military power had been quietly moving into position for this moment. Captain Yun Tae's voice joined the broadcast from the bridge of his flagship, the US Retribution, as it hung in orbit above the burning ruins of Valon Prime's orbital defenses. Admiral Song, this is Captain Yun reporting from Valon home space. All primary targets have been neutralized. Enemy resistance was lighter than expected. The captain's image appeared alongside Admiral Song's, showing a young human officer whose calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the destruction visible through the windows behind him. We've secured the capital system, along with their main shipyards, industrial centers, and military academies. The Valon Emperor is requesting immediate negotiations. Admiral Song nodded approvingly. Well done, Captain. Begin Phase 2 of the operation. I want every Valon military installation in this sector of the galaxy identified and neutralized within the next 72 hours. The alien species watching this exchange felt a chill run through their civilizations. Phase 2. This had all been just the opening move in a larger strategy. All species currently aligned with the Valon Empire, Admiral Song continued, turning her attention back to the galaxy at large. You now have a choice to make. You can continue to support an empire that has just lost its entire home fleet and most of its core territories, or you can begin negotiations with humanity for new diplomatic relationships. The message was clear without being spoken directly. The Valon Empire was finished, and humanity was now the dominant military power in this region of space. The species that had allied themselves with the aliens out of fear now had to decide whether they wanted to make enemies of the humans who had just demonstrated their true capabilities. To those who chose to remain neutral during this conflict, Song added, humanity bears you no ill will. We are not conquerors by nature. We simply wanted to be left alone to grow and explore the galaxy in peace. Unfortunately, the Valon Empire made that impossible. Admiral Kavmor's damaged flagship finally reached the edge of Earth's solar system, but there would be no escape for him. Long-range sensors showed human patrol ships moving to intercept the survivors, not to destroy them, but to escort them, to secure facilities where they would be held until the war's end. The Valon Empire, which had ruled this sector of the galaxy for over a millennium, had ceased to exist in the span of a single day. Their mistake had been simple. They had looked at humanity's youth and assumed it meant weakness. They had seen the easy conquest of human colonies and believed it represented the limits of human capability. Instead, they had awakened something that had been preparing for this exact scenario since the first human ship left Earth's orbit. Humanity had always known that somewhere among the stars they would eventually meet a species that wanted to destroy them. When that day came, they had been ready. The real war wasn't just beginning, it was already over. Earth's children had claimed their place among the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same.